So my topic that I chose for my capstone project was assessment for learning. It's a movement in education that really is based around when the assessment happens, whether it be by the teacher or by a peer. The student doesn't just use it as something to monitor their progress, or the teacher monitor their progress, but rather they actually act upon it by identifying strengths and weaknesses, reflecting upon it, etc. So the reason I chose this topic, I had observed a colleague in a 7th grade math classroom, both formally and informally, and I noticed the system she was using, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I started to do some research online, and I actually found that there was a lot of teachers online talking about it, and they're in various areas through podcasts and Twitter, and then also some PLCs and scholarly journals. From there, what I decided to, so that I had now decided this was going to be the topic that I would focus on for the semester. What I wanted to do was take this system, the assessment for learning, and adapt it to a 7th grade humanities classroom. And what I wanted to be able to do with it was kind of show my kids that it's not only the numbers that you get back on a test or an exam, or a project, and that it's not the end all be all, but it's something that they can work with, something that they can reflect upon. They can figure out ways to learn better. They can find out where their strengths are, where they may need some areas for improvement. And so that was generally the goal with it. And really it was about this, how do you adapt it to a humanities classroom? So that was one of the challenges. In math, which I had been observing, there really is a right and a wrong typically to a student's ability to exercise a concept. But in humanities, or in the language arts and the history, whether it be on a written exam or some kind of a project or a quiz, sometimes a little more ambiguous as to whether or not that they understand the standard that is being measured. Another challenge, whenever you add something onto the students' plates who are very busy, you need to make sure there's buy-in there. I think I had a little bit of a leg up because the students were familiar with this type of system. Half my students have this particular math teacher, and they kind of knew where I was going with it, even though there would be some slight changes. And then also I had to figure out where this was going to happen. My colleague had been using notebooks for it. I did want something that was more secure, first of all, so something that wouldn't vanish like sometimes happens with middle school students' paperwork. But also something that I could peer in on at any time. So I was trying to figure out notebook, maybe native to their iPads, or do we do some kind of a cloud-based version for them to be tracking their progress. So what we ended up doing, I do envision goal setting for each of the units that we go through. However, we didn't really do that this first unit. I think it was just fine because it was kind of a foreign concept for them to be tracking their understanding of history in this way. I think as we go into our next unit, they will have a much better understanding of where they may be weak in areas and stronger in other areas, and it will shape their goals. The way that their checklists and basically their reflections are based, it is a standards-based checklist from the California State Standards for the social sciences. What we decided on was using Google Drive. I designed a template for the students to use and got them each individual templates that are only shared with me, so I can kind of track their progress, poke in, see where they're at, and even leave comments at times on students' checklists. Following each unit of study, and we're just wrapping up our first unit using this system now, the students will actually print out this checklist along with the reflections, and we'll add that to a year-long portfolio that they've already been putting together. It's kind of an archival of materials as we move towards final exams. But from this point forward, they'll actually use these reflections to kind of be like a cover sheet for that particular unit that we were studying. So the results of this, and it went over the course of about a month and a half. It was already happening in my colleague's math class, as I had stated earlier, and then it began happening in my humanities class as well. it was a systematic approach. At this point, I really don't have enough long view data. I mean, it's just one single unit we've done to actually compare improvement. I do look forward to having enough to do that by the end of this school year, or at least a light version of that, and then continuing into next year. This is something I'd like to check out as we go into next fall. The feedback, though, is more verbal, and then also just what I was able to visually see from the kids and their checklists. I do want to mention that my mentor recommended that I go beyond what the math teacher originally was going purely based on kind of percentages and scores for the understanding and kind of moving along the checklist. What we decided to do in the humanities is to go another step into actually written reflections for each time the kids are logging this data. Not only does it line up with kind of the movement with Common Core, with more writing and then also reading, it also, I think, it gets them to a more of a depth of understanding of where they are at with their learning, where they're strong, where they're weak, and then also maybe some reasons for that once they've been able to write it out. So some student perspective, as I said, I was able to get some audio and physical examples. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you for watching. I'm excited to continue down this path, see what we can do to better our students' understanding of their own learning. That's really the goal here. And thank you. Thank you to my mentor. Thank you also to my colleague that had helped me out in progressing towards this project.